And good morning, everyone, and welcome to this Marini and Ocean Power Innovation Network Discovery Room on hydrogen and the route to net zero. So I'm Simon Cheeseman. I work for the Offshore Renewable Energy Catapult, and we'll be telling you more about the catapult in one of the presentations. So I'll be your chairman for today, and I'll do the introductions to the various speakers, and I'll manage questions and answers. As Vicky said, if you've got any questions, just put them in the chat. We will share the slides afterwards as well. We've got quite a lot to pack in today. So here's today's agenda. We've got Kasper Stefanak from Offshore Renewable Energy Catapult telling you about our work in developing the UK hydrogen roadmap. Then Michelle Hitches, also from the Catapult, but based in Wales at our Marine Engineering Centre of Excellence, is going to talk to you about a live hydrogen project we've got there, the Energy Kingdom. And then Rob Flynn from the European Marine Energy Centre is going to talk about the number of very interesting hydrogen projects that they've got running up there. Bevan Ray from Cornwall, based in Yangatech down here in Falmouth, will talk to you about their tidal hydrogen production, storage and offtake project. Some really interesting video clips there of that. And then we've got Professor Xiaowan Li from University of Exeter and Mi Tam from University of Exeter. They're going to talk to you about more around the technical side of electrolysers and energy storage and the sort of way ahead. So first of all, a little bit about the people sort of sponsoring today's event. So Marini is a SME support project based down in Cornwall. And the project's live at the moment, and it runs out to the end of December 22, and there is a request for an extension until mid-23. And really what effectively that offers is the opportunity to develop marine technology, working with the partners that you can see at the bottom of the slide there. So it's led by University of Exeter, it's supported by ourselves, Offshore Renewable Energy Catapult, with the University of Plymouth, Cornwall Development Company, Cornwall College, and Cornwall Marine Network as well. And really what we do is we're covering sort of floating wind, wave and tidal, we're covering energy storage, really quite a full gambit of marine technology in terms of working with local SMEs to develop technology and help them commercialize that technology. We provide access to test facilities, we provide access to researchers, and we also sort of signpost grant availability as well. These are the sort of skills that we can offer through Marine Lab, and that's either through the partners, either the universities or ourselves at Offshore Renewable Energy Catapult. So we can sort of support design and innovation work. But what we really offer businesses is, support to research, development, innovation, access to our test facilities that are already there and working. There's graduate placement opportunity, an outreach program. This provides sort of an increased profile for a business. We also carry out sort of PR and marketing as well. So that's sort of there. And we can also provide signposting for grant support. The program did kick off with a grant package already built in, but at the moment, that's all been sort of taken up. So at the moment, we're signposting to other grants. The other organisation or project that's co-hosting this is the Ocean Power Innovation Network. And this is about trying to draw together people who are sort of working in the ocean energy field, but would benefit from being in a network. And the idea is that, and it's supported by these partners, so the Catapult are in there, it's led by Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland. And the network's actually, well established now, and this is the sort of idea of the membership. And so it's not just exclusively within the Northwest Europe region, it's actually much broader, it's worldwide now. It's free to join, and a lot of the benefits are free to access as well. So they run events such as this one, they provide expert advice. I lead the technology assessment process, so if you've got a piece of technology and you want some independent analysis of that, you want it to be benchmarked with something else that's in the sector, you want some help in de-risking that route to development and commercialization. We can do that for you. It's a free service through Ocean Power Innovation Network. You get a report at the end of that, which is yours to keep. We find that's a very useful service for developers, particularly at early stages as well, maybe at the concept stage, when they're trying to look at optioneering and things like that. We can help with a lot of sort of signposting as well. We run something called collaborative innovation groups, which is really looking at key issues and trying to peel back the layers of the onion around those key issues, and get to the heart of a problem and help you resolve an issue. So Ocean Power Innovation Network is really sort of trying to link up sort of problem owners with solution providers, and sort of encourage that sort of cross-fertilization of ideas. And again, this project's running out till the middle of 2023. There is a members list. There is an open library that you can access as well. There's various contact points. Okay, so that's the introduction bit done from me. So what I'll do now is I'll just end my sharing of slides here, if I can, and I'll invite Casper to upload his slides. And Casper's from our research and development team at the Offshore Renewable Energy Catapult. And he is involved in our sort of strategy analysis and very much at the forefront of our thinking around hydrogen. And Casper's one of the editors of our benchmark report on the integration of hydrogen systems. So Casper, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Simon. I hope the slides are up.
Yeah, they're all good and we can hear you. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. So just a quick introduction to ORE Catapult. We are a non-for-profit research organization. We are part of the Catapult network, mostly located in Glasgow and Blyth, where we have our testing facilities. But we, at the moment, have numerous regional offices, including Southwest, Wales, Aberdeen, Hull, and East of England. We are there to help to create UK economic benefit in this sector by helping to reduce the cost of offshore renewables and support the growth of the industry. I guess a good starting point is a point on net zero. We, as UK, are legally obliged to reach the net zero emissions by 2050, which is in less than 30 years. This means that all major emitting sectors, including travel, heating, manufacturing, power generation, and farming practices, will need to change radically during the next 30 years. Even with robust efficiency improvements, our electricity use will double or even quadruple to what it is right now. This will require major new policy reforms to drive both the supply and demand of low, zero, and negative carbon technologies. We may observe jumping of the installed capacity of offshore wind from 12 gigawatts to 75 or even 100. Hydrogen production, which at the moment is mostly from fossil fuels, will jump from around 27 to 370 terawatt hours. We'll need to decarbonize all of our transport and freight. The number of zero carbon cars will jump from 250,000 to 33 million. And it will also require some lifestyle changes, like changes to diet, where we'll need to cut our beef, lamb, and dairy consumption. Taking a look into a potential offshore wind-dominated energy system in 2050, this schematic represents a potential energy sector. Offshore wind is expected to be the largest source of renewable generation capacity by 2030 in the UK. And in recent years, numerous studies have highlighted the need for hydrogen to provide flexibility and balancing of the energy system by 2050. in such a system dominated by renewable generation, green hydrogen will play the same essential role in ensuring security of supply for heating, electricity, and transport needs that oil and gas does today. There are key integration challenges to such a system, starting from the grid and grid design and flexibility. We have balancing for short time frames, which includes integrating variable energy source into the electricity grid, which will be probably supported by demand response, utility scale batteries, and vehicle to grid. Balancing for long time frames, like interseasonal balancing, and decarbonization of heating, cargo transport, and maritime sector. This will require some policy mandates and frameworks, like level of interconnection, role of hydrogen in energy trading, hydrogen safety regulations, and offshore wind deployment regulations. This leads us to a quick explanation of what are all these colors in hydrogen production meaning. You've probably heard about green and blue. Green is hydrogen that's produced from electricity, most commonly from renewable electricity. So this can be wind, solar, or hydropower. The technology employed is water electrolysis. There are different types of electrolyzers, HEM, IEL, or SOEC. Later presentations will focus on this a bit more. There are no emissions related to this hydrogen production technology, which makes it such a good candidate for our net zero future. The other terms that you might have heard is clean, zero carbon, or carbon neutral hydrogen. The similar premises with purple hydrogen, which is produced using nuclear. Then we have the fossil fuels based hydrogen, starting from blue, which is usually referred to natural gas reforming or gasification and carbon capture, utilization, and storage. It has low CO2 emissions and it's still considered to be somewhat important for our net zero future. And the other types of hydrogen production that are currently in place, but obviously will need to be changed over the course of next 20, 30 years. Because hydrogen is considered such an important part of the energy system, we took a study together with Offshore Wind Industry Council and delivered a report on offshore wind and hydrogen, solving the integration challenge. It's available publicly on Ori Catapult's website. I think we released it on September, which makes it almost in the time when we're writing almost a year old. And in hydrogen space, a year-old report is already quite old, because some of the findings might have been updated. Nevertheless, most of them are still in place. I'd like to present you some of the key findings from this report. Starting from the energy system, we will require around 130 to 200 terawatt hours of hydrogen in 2050 in order to integrate 75 gigawatts of offshore wind or more. Second, and probably the most interesting, is that green hydrogen from offshore wind costs less than blue hydrogen by 2050. And with accelerated deployment, this cost can drop even further by 2030. This means that hydrogen production from natural gas with carbon capture and storage might not be a necessary part of net zero UK energy economy in 2050. The cost reduction will be quite similar to what we've managed to achieve in offshore wind. So technology acceleration will be an essential means of reducing this cost. We have a strong leadership in academia and the industry to build on. And the good part is that we've already done that before with offshore wind, so we can apply these lessons to just another sector. There are plenty of potential benefits. It's not only UK that's looking into hydrogen. The whole world, it's been a hot topic for the whole world. We've tried to calculate these benefits, and we can have a cumulative GVA in 2050 of 320 billions, of which 250 is in exports. We can create and sustain 120,000 jobs. And there is an additional potential in green hydrogen exports to Europe, using up to 240 gigawatts of dedicated offshore wind. Building a bit more into the cost reduction, modern PEM electrolyzers are a new industry with a significant scope for cost reduction. The research started in around 70s, and the first commercial product at more than 1 megawatt scale was released in 2015. Until very recently, every unit was hand-built. As you can see on the graph, most of the cost reduction for green hydrogen occurs by 2030, by which point it can meet a significant part of energy demand. The average levelized cost of hydrogen converges to the same value for systems with AIL and PEM technology from mid-2030s, and approaches in both concepts an average 2.20 pounds per kilogram of hydrogen by 2030 and 170 pounds per kilogram of hydrogen by 2050. As you can see on the graph, the main cost of electrolyzer is electricity from renewable sources. So if we manage to successfully drive down the cost of offshore wind or any other renewable source, the cost of electrolyzers will also drop down significantly. If you're interested in other types of electrolyzers or other types of scenarios, we have 12 cost breakdowns for that in the report. But it's not only about generation, it's also about who will be using these, who will be using this hydrogen. This graph represents a demand for a fuel in 2030. So the size of the block means that we need this much energy, and on the x-axis we try to map the cost, the break-even points where a specific hydrogen application would become cost competitive in comparison to another zero carbon alternative in the UK. Meaning that number 5, which is boilers for heating, we believe that hydrogen could be cost competitive at 4.2 pounds per kilogram. At our forecast, which is 220 pounds per kilogram by 2030, green hydrogen could meet a really significant part of energy demand in sectors that otherwise would be difficult to decarbonize. This includes vans, trucks, maritime. So we're not talking about a technology that will be necessary in 20, 30 years. We really need to start now. That's why we've developed a roadmap with recommendations to the government. It has 3 essential tracks. The first is an R&D program, which The elements in particular related to the sales tax component will draw upon our world-leading capabilities that already exist within our UK academia. The second track is a track of demonstrations at scale, including demonstration projects in production, in mobility, in gas network, and industry, and the set of enabling actions and policies, which consist of the track 3. As I've mentioned before, UK is not the only country where we're looking into hydrogen. Several other countries announced their strategies over the past 3 years, including EU last year. We know that there are some of them in preparation, including ours, and hopefully the hydrogen strategy for the UK will be published in the first half of this year. So to leave you with a bit of thinking, I've tried to compile some of the questions on hydrogen, starting with what's the role of the hydrogen in the UK? How much do we need it and at which point? Where should it be used? There are so many applications, but will we really need it for personal cars, for example? How much carbon could we save? What are the energy system implications? At which specific points where can the UK take a global leadership position? And what existing assets can we leverage? Obviously, in order to achieve that, we need to figure out what do we need to do now to achieve that. What are the barriers? How do we reduce the cost? What is the role of the government? How do we encourage coordination across sectors, particularly in regions that have focus on oil and gas? How do we ensure we have the right skills, and what infrastructure will we need? Thank you for listening, and I'll pass over to Simon.
Yep, thanks very much, Kasper. That was an excellent introduction to hydrogen and to the work that you're doing and you're involved in with the hydrogen roadmap. We've got some time for questions before our next speaker, which is Michelle at past. I can't see any questions in the chat at the moment. If you've got a question, either put it in the chat or put your hand up now, and we can take that question live. I'm just interested myself, Kasper, in terms of sort of funding for hydrogen research and funding for sort of innovation. Have you got a view on what that sort of landscape looks like at the moment? Are there more funding opportunities appearing now that we can sort of steer people towards?
Not yet. We'll be hoping that with the announcement of the hydrogen strategy, which really should be over the next 3 months, we will see more of that. There's been a significant pot of funding given to the industrial clusters, and they are trying to decarbonize using hydrogen. So these are multi-million projects. There are also some smaller programs for decarbonizing transport, but our view is that most probably there should be a pretty big pot once the strategy will be announced.
Okay, brilliant. And I suppose in terms of, I can see quite a lot of different, research activities going on, industry investing in hydrogen projects and sort of changing things like that. There seems to be that there needs to be some sort of controlling mind, if you like, some sort of coordination across all these activities. Have we got any feel for maybe who's doing that or will do it, or who's best placed to do it?
Well, that's actually a great question. We are one of the projects that we're currently working on is the Cross Catapult project, where we are trying to set up a virtual hydrogen innovation institute. Because there are, I have a feeling that for offshore wind, that's probably a role from Ori Catapult, but I might be biased. There's no such a single single body for hydrogen. There are numerous initiatives from different companies, but these are more projects rather than organizations. So we are trying to set up one of these over the course of next month.
Okay, brilliant. We've got a couple of questions coming in from our delegates. So one from John Cherry about, do we see there being hydrogen debate as part of the COP26 climate change discussions in November in Glasgow?
Absolutely. I think that there really should be one. I think that there will be one. There will be a big focus on hydrogen, particularly that during the last 2 years, the topic just got really got up the pace.
Yeah, okay. And then one from Will, who asked, he sees more of a role for ammonia, particularly in transportation. And do we see this as sort of complementary fuel or alternative to hydrogen?
I believe it's complementary because it's one of the intermediate energy carriers, and this will also be a role for the public bodies to try to advise on which fuel will be the fuel for the future. Because if we'll decide that maritime industry will mostly run on ammonia, then we should be updating the port infrastructure to ammonia tankers and not to hydrogen. But before, we really just firstly need the strategy to be able to say, okay, which carrier are we focusing on?
Right. So do you think I ought to go out and buy my electric vehicle tomorrow, or do you think I ought to wait a couple of years and?
Well, actually, Simon, in your region, there's quite an interesting company called River Simple that Michelle will be talking about shortly. So I'll be hoping that maybe in the near future they'll be having some cars in that region. Okay,
look forward to that. Alan Huth, he just points out that in Saudi there's a project there, $5 billion hydrogen project. Sort of an eye-watering amount, isn't it? So that's obviously one to watch. Yeah. I don't know, Alan Huth, if you're actually involved in that or close to that. Perhaps put some more details in the chat or a link so we can probably have a look at that. A question from Li Xiaoeng and Casper. Do we work with the Hydrogen FC Supergen Hub?
Hydrogen Fuel Cell Supergen Hub. No.
Right.
Not at the moment. We
right.
touched when we were writing the report, but we don't work as closely as we would like to.
Okay, so we plan to work with them a little bit more in the future, perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Okay. I'll stop at the questions there, if I may. Casper, thank you very much. That was, as I say, an excellent lead-in for today's workshop.
Thanks, Simon.
Next up, you're welcome. Next up, we've got Michelle Hitches, who's one of our project managers in Wales and working on the Energy Kingdom project. So, Michelle, over to you. Are you there, Michelle? I can't hear you. I can see your slides.
Yes, sorry.
Okay, thanks, Michelle.
Hi, everyone. Yes, so I'm Michelle Hitches. I work for Offshore Renewable Energy Catapult, and I'm based in the Welsh office down in Pembroke Dock. So I project manage the Milford Haven Energy Kingdom projects and also the MEIS project. The Milford Haven Energy Kingdom is a £4.5 million project funded through Innovate UK's Prospering from the Energy Revolution programme. The project is exploring what a decarbonised smart local energy system could look like for the Milford Haven, Pembroke and Pembroke Dock areas. The project is exploring the potential of hydrogen as part of a multi-vector approach to decarbonisation. Central to the project and achieving net zero is a commitment to engage with the community and the local industry, providing insight and opportunities for growth. Innovate UK's Prospering from the Energy Revolution programme is looking at intelligent local energy systems providing cleaner, cheaper and more efficient energy. But setting these up can be very complex. They need to integrate heat, power and transport services, and require innovation in areas from energy storage to data management. The detailed design projects like Energy Kingdom are developing designs for local energy systems that focus on areas the size of towns, cities and regions. The designs cover a wide range of energy systems, urban and rural, domestic and industrial, commercial and mixed energy systems. These projects are looking to move away from the traditional energy innovation approach to a new approach. So why did we pick the Milford Haven waterway? The Port of Milford Haven is a leading UK port handling over 30 million tonnes of cargo annually. It is also known as the UK's largest energy port and is capable of delivering 30% of the UK's natural gas demand. It has also got 17-metre depth of water available at all states of the tide and the ability to handle vessels with drafts up to 22 metres. It also has proximity to the Atlantic trade routes and also has a high capacity for gas and oil pipelines and electricity connections to the centre of the UK. The project has 5 main partners, so Pembrokeshire County Council as the lead partner, the Port of Milford Haven, River Simple, Wales and West Utilities and ourselves. We're being supported by Arup and Energy Systems Catapult as subcontractors, and then we have various non-funded collaborators and supporters. A national transition from natural gas to hydrogen is increasingly seen as likely component of full decarbonisation by 2050. When the Energy Kingdom project was written, we wrote the objective as to establish seed markets for the use of hydrogen around the Milford Haven waterway by integrating a wide range of major energy facilities, renewable energy generators and energy consumers in the community, using a systems architecture that can be implemented with commercial ready solutions and which focuses on underlying fundamentals and is therefore robust in the face of regulatory change. Our ambition for the project is to gather a detailed insight to the whole energy system around the Milford Haven area. We want to identify and design a future smart local energy system based on a truly multi-vector approach and a comprehensive energy systems architecture. As a team, we will investigate local renewable energy, including solar, onshore wind, future offshore wind and biomass for decarbonised gas transition. Diversified seed markets for hydrogen across buildings, transport and industry, consumer trials of fuel cell vehicles and hydrogen-ready heating systems. We believe this exciting project holds promise in showcasing the far-reaching benefits of low-carbon energy. If successful, it has potential to lead the way and become the first of many smart local energy systems supporting the UK on our local communities in reaching the government's targets of net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. In the project, we have 11 work packages. Energy Systems Catapult are developing our systems architecture design. Arup is currently working on understanding the interplay of the local energy assets in the Milford Haven area, engaging with a range of local stakeholders as part of this exercise, both to introduce the Milford Haven Energy Kingdom project and to begin to draw on information required to support the project. Pembrokeshire County Council and River Simple are developing the hydrogen transport demonstrator. The Port of Milford Haven and Wales and West Utilities are developing the hybrid heating trial. We also are looking at finance and investment. So we're concentrating on engaging investors and demonstrating an economic and sustainable investment case for the decarbonised multi-vector energy system. We're going to be doing lots of stakeholder engagement. We're going to engage with stakeholders and explain potential environmental, economic, well-being, energy security and particular benefits for the decarbonised multi-vector energy system. The stakeholder engagement will draw strongly on the vehicle and hydrogen heating demonstrators, which will support awareness raising and education by just demonstrating how hydrogen can be integrated into the local Milford Haven area. I'm just going to quickly show you a short video about the project.
I'm here at Milford, which is the central location for our Milford Haven Energy Kingdom project. In 2016, Welsh Government funded Pembrokeshire County Council and the Port of Milford Haven to undertake a study to create a zero carbon area for this marina. We've expanded the focus outwards on a more regional basis, and the Milford Haven Energy Kingdom project now seeks to explore how we can create hydrogen via the rapid growth in renewable electricity and how that can play a vital part in our decarbonised energy future.
The project's taken steps to prove that hydrogen has a place here in the UK's largest energy port. That's important because it ensures growth, prosperity, keeping jobs and industry alive here, and making most of the transferable skills from a successful existing energy sector.
In order to make sure we have the data that we need for our design, we're really pleased to be hosting a few demonstrators, which includes just behind me on the quay an electrolyser producing green hydrogen from local electricity for 2 River Simple hydrogen vehicles to use. And we'll also be using a hydrogen boiler to demonstrate hydrogen heating in one of the buildings nearby.
The project has the potential to become the first of many smart local energy systems and seeks to make a strong business case for investment in hydrogen to the government and engaged key stakeholders in the waterway.
The ISCF funding has been absolutely critical to allow us to take forward a design for a decarbonised whole energy system. Ultimately, our project aims to benefit the wider South Wales region and the UK's national net zero aspirations.
So as the video showed, we're proposing to site our hydrogen refueler demonstration on Mackerel Quay in Milford Haven. We will be electrolysing green hydrogen on site from the Port of Milford Haven's Smart Local Energy Cluster. If everything goes to plan, the refueler and cars should be in place by the end of May 2021. That's a bit delayed. We were hoping to have them by the end of March, but due to COVID, it's just taking that little bit longer. So we're going to have 2 River Simple Razza cars, which will predominantly be shared between Pembrokeshire County Council, the NHS and the Port of Milford Haven. In the first instance, these cars are going to be allocated to particular people for a month. For example, community nurses, fleet managers, maintenance teams. The idea of this is that the month before they have the Razza car, we're going to put a monitoring device on the car that they normally use. We can then measure their driving styles, the routes they take, other variant information to learn all about them and what they do with their vehicle. So then when they go into the Razza car, we can compare the data and we can use this then to feed valuable information then into the reports. It gives us a better picture of how the vehicles compare to each other. Whilst they're using the Razza car, they're also going to be asked to complete various short questionnaires as they're going out throughout their month, so that we can also gain the user experience as well as the data behind the drone. COVID allowing, we're hoping to have numerous community events where people can come and sit in the cars and learn all about the hydrogen fuel cell system technology. We're also having a demonstrator hybrid heat pump and a hydrogen ready boiler in one of Port of Milford Haven's buildings. The building we've chosen, it is a commercial building, but it's the same size as a domestic bungalow. So it'll help us gain vital feedback to comparison the data with existing conventional boilers. These trials are really important as they will allow people to test real-world hydrogen vehicles and heating equipment, and the data from both these trials are going to feed into our final reports. Some of the reports that we're going to be having after this project will be designing an underlying systems architecture for a trading platform, infrastructure outline drawings, generation model and hydrogen production model. We're looking for a detailed design for hydrogen ready heating systems, a design outline drawing for transport solutions, and also a budget for the complete local energy system. The Milford Haven Energy Kingdom project intends to provide a detailed design blueprint for an investable local hydrogen-based energy system on the Milford Haven waterway that will allow for the integration of heat, power and transport. We want to establish a roadmap from the Energy Kingdom perspective of policy change necessary to support the energy system that incorporates hydrogen. We believe that this project will bring many benefits locally through the safeguarding of energy sector jobs in the area where there's a high import of natural gas as we transition towards the low carbon society. The project benefits will also be wide reaching through providing deeper understanding of energy vector integration and system architecture to the project partners, stakeholders and wider community. We hope that our project will support Pembrokeshire County Council, Welsh Government and UK Government in understanding where investments need to be made to move forward towards our low or indeed zero carbon society. I'm just going to give you a quick introduction now to the MEIS project I work on. So that's the Marine Energy Engineering Centre of Excellence. So this is based in Wales and it was developed to carry out research and development projects with companies in the West Wales and the Valleys region predominantly. Our aim is to support innovation in the marine energy sector, but not exclusively. So we can work with companies to support designing of products and components, building, testing, verification and validation. Our natural target is the marine energy supply chain companies and developers, but we're also looking to work with people in aquaculture, hydrogen and any other product or service that would benefit from being demonstrated in the Milford Haven waterway. So if you're not based in Wales or in West Wales and the Valleys, we can work with you as long as we can prove that there's a benefit of your device being tested in the Milford Haven area. So if you do have any product ideas or products that could benefit from further research or testing, please get in touch. My contact details there. And that's everything from me.
Brilliant, Michelle. Thanks very much indeed. That was excellent. I mean, what an exciting project. I mean, you know, covering transport, heat and power. That's really going to keep you busy. Have you had much interest from other communities, you know, around that sort of Milford Haven area or even beyond in terms of what you're doing?
We've had lots of people inquiring about what the project's doing. So to help with that now, we're setting up a website sort of with frequently asked questions to see how people can get involved and keep up to date. We're hoping now when we've got draft reports coming out shortly, so we're hoping then that we'll get more interest then from other communities wanting to do the same thing that we're doing.
Yeah, brilliant. And in terms of, you know, the number of vehicles that are going to go out then, is it just cars or is there lorries involved as well?
No, we're only having 2 cars at the moment.
Right.
People are looking to develop vans, but they're not quite ready yet.
Right, okay. And then in terms of sort of, you know, insight reports and things like that coming out of the project, are any available yet or will there be some available in the future?
There's none available at the moment, so they should be available around March of next year. And I believe that all the reports will be issued so that everyone can see them. Yeah.
Okay, good. And then in terms of, so a lot of the funding for this has come through the Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund. Are you sort of, in terms of future funding then, is there going to be a sort of Energy Kingdom 2 or something broader, or is it still early days yet? I suppose you've got to wait to see the impact from this one.
We are hoping that there'll be an Energy Kingdom 2, but the South Wales Industrial Cluster projects are also going to use our reports to feed into their projects. So even if we aren't successful to have another project, our data will be used in those projects, which will be great. Yeah. Okay, no, that's great. Thank you very much indeed, Michelle. I can't see any questions from the audience. You say the website's not up yet and running? No, it should be up now within the next week. Oh, okay, great. So we've obviously put the link in that from our own Catapult website, I presume. Yes, we will. Yeah, great. Okay.
What I'll do then is, if there are no further questions, I'll ask Rob Flynn from the European Marine Energy Centre to upload his slides. And Rob's going to talk to us about a number of fascinating projects that EMEC are involved in. So, Rob, can I ask you to take the floor, please? I can see your slides, Rob, but I can't hear you. No, you're still on mute, Rob. That's it.
Now?
Yeah,
great.
that's it. Perfect. Thanks very much.
Sorry, several screens getting a bit complicated. Thanks a lot, Simon. And thanks a lot, Michelle. That was a really interesting presentation. So right, my name's Rob Flynn. I'm the commercial manager at the European Marine Energy Centre. And I'm going to go through a little bit of an introduction to EMEC and what it is that we do in case you're not aware of the organisation. Then talk a bit about why we came to work on hydrogen, and then introduce a few of our hydrogen projects. So firstly, for those of you who don't know EMEC, we're a reasonably small research organization based up in the Orkney Islands, about 50 people or so, with a few people down south as well. Our main core business is testing marine energy technologies, and we operate open sea test sites for doing that. We were set up back in 2003 with about £34 million of public funding to build out these facilities. Last year, we were accredited under a number of ISO accreditations, such as 17025 and 17020. And last year, we were also awarded became the first accredited marine energy test center under the IECRE system for marine energy technologies. So we're up in Orkney because we have really strong tides up there, really strong waves, and the weather, as you can see in this picture, is always fantastic as well. Okay, so just a bit about the facilities before we move on. These are kind of the two main facilities that we use. The one on the left is our full-scale wave energy test site. So we've got 5 subsea cables going out to it, and we can generate up to 7 megawatts of electricity out there. And typically we work with technology developers who come along, put their device in the water, and we have the site instrumented up and really well surveyed to test their technologies. And then on the right-hand side, we have a similar site. This one is for testing tidal energy technology. There's 7 subsea cables going out offshore, coming back to a substation onshore that I'll go into in a little more detail. And we get quite strong tides flowing through here. Some of the best, one of the best tidal sites, I would say, in the UK. It flows up to about 4 meters per second spring tides. And we've tested a huge amount of technologies there over the last coming on 20 years now. So most of the big tidal energy technology developers and quite a few wave energy technology developers as well. And yeah, I guess it's fair to say we've tested an awful lot more of these technologies than any other single site or test center in the world. So just briefly, what we're up to over the next 6 months or so, we've got a few technologies. There wasn't a lot of activity on sites last year due to COVID. And I think what we found is everything is kind of moving to the right into the first half of this year. So we've got 2 wave energy technologies, Motion and AWS, who will be coming on site in March and June this year. We're also testing a floating wind mooring system, which is being developed by TFI Marine. And then towards the middle of the summer, or the start of the summer, we'll have Orbital and Magiana's 2 floating tidal energy technology developers coming on site and connecting at our fall awareness test site. And then lastly, to pack off a busy 6 months, we're installing a flow cell battery, 1.8 megawatt hour flow cell battery with Invinity on our tidal energy test site. Okay, so then on to the hydrogen bit. So we started looking at this in about 2014, and due to the quite unique situation in Orkney, where about 130% of electricity requirements Orkney produces about 130% of its electricity requirements from renewables each year. So there's a question as to what you do with that extra electricity. And quite a bit of the time, because of the active network management system that operates in Orkney, wind generators in particular are being curtailed, and when they're not generating, where they're being told to turn off by the network operator, they're not making any money. So that's an issue. It's also an issue on our tidal site, where we only have 4 megawatts of export capacity. So when we want to generate more than that 4 megawatts, we wanted to have some kind of an outlet for doing that. So in 2014, we started looking at a lot of different solutions for what we can do. Further graph here as well, just highlighting the disparity in electricity consumption and production and demand on Orkney. So as you can see, quite a lot of renewable energy on the grid. So we started looking essentially at what we can do with this spare capacity rather than just turning off wind turbines or tidal turbines, as the case may be. And this took us down the route of looking at hydrogen in about 2015, and subsequently we built out a number of projects. So just briefly to kind of, these are the kind of the base projects that we started off at EMEC on the production of hydrogen. And I don't know if you can see my cursor, but starting up on the top left-hand side of this map here on the island of Edi, this is where our tidal energy site is. So we have tidal turbines feeding electricity into the substation here. We also have a partnership with a community-owned wind turbine, which is experiencing very high curtailment rates. So we're taking electrons from the wind turbine and also from the tidal turbines and generating hydrogen using a 670 kilowatt ITM electrolyzer on site here. So producing hydrogen, then that gets compressed and stored at our substation and shipped via ferry back to the mainland, where we have a 75 kilowatts fuel cell, which is powering the auxiliary systems on ships while they're docked in harbour here. We also have a hydrogen refueling station as well, which refuels a fleet of vans that's owned by the local council. In parallel, there's also a 1 megawatt electrolyzer on this island here of Schappensee, which is also generating hydrogen from a curtailed wind turbine and shipping the hydrogen back to shore. The long-term goal really where we want to get with this is around powering the ferries and maritime transports on Orkney. We kind of had to break this up into different parts. And with all of the moving around of hydrogen in this way, it does become, it's not a commercially competitive concept at present, but as a research center, it gives us the opportunity to break up the challenge into different bits around how you regulate the transport of hydrogen, the handling of the gas, and lots of interesting stuff that we've had the opportunity to get into. The next project then on the generation side is on the right-hand side of this picture here, where we're working with Orbital Marine Power and our partners at Areva, who were recently acquired by GTT and have changed their name to Elogen, I think. So they'll be putting a second electrolyzer on site into this system at Edi later this year. So that's kind of on the generation side and where we got to. And just to kind of go into that in a little bit more detail, the system that's kind of emerging, I suppose, here on the hydrogen side. So we have the ITM electrolyzer, which you'll see on the right-hand side here behind this wall. Storage tanks here, compression facilities here. This is the substations then and various power conditioning equipment that belongs to different tidal energy technology developers. So as I said, we're putting in the bottom right-hand corner here, there is a second electrolyzer going in later this year. And then the Invinity flow cell battery as well, which we'll be using to kind of smooth, I suppose, the production of hydrogen on the site. And that's a Scottish government funded project, which we launched earlier this year. Okay, so I guess, then you come to the point where we've made hydrogen and there's opportunities to do something with that hydrogen. As a research center, this is a really nice place to be in. We've kind of come down this route where we've had a challenge in front of us and we've tackled it, but then that opens up other opportunities as well. So taking a look at this is an audit of what energy is used in Orkney, and considering that the electricity piece is kind of looking after itself, and as we've seen from Casper's slides as well, the proliferation of offshore wind across the UK, it's really going to mean that we're going to have quite a low carbon per kilowatt in the future. So given that that's largely to look after itself, then what can we do with the hydrogen to decarbonize other aspects of the economy? It was also good to see in Casper's presentation as well around highlighting that the maritime aspect is quite an attractive price point for producing hydrogen into as a market. And that's kind of a conclusion that we've come to as well. And we've really decided to zero in on that maritime transport aspect. The other part as well is looking at inter-island and off-island flights, which does have a lower price point, but is also something that's quite interesting in the Orkney context. So looking at the energy audit, we decided these are the kind of the bits in the green box here, the ones that we're going to focus on for further decarbonization. And we started to develop this R&D program around that kind of that principle of reaching net zero. So point one here is around the production of hydrogen. Then point two, we're moving into this area where we're looking at the storing and handling of hydrogen. We've done quite a bit of work on, I'll get to that in a second, around how you produce hydrogen on site, store it, but then the handling of the gas and also the dispensing of the gas, and a lot in how the refueling technologies work in particular. And then also looking at developing hydrogen use cases to support other decarbonizing activities. So stuff, as I mentioned, around the transport aspect is really where we're zeroing in. And in particular on the maritime transport aspect and aviation. We've learned a lot, particularly in the maritime space, just run into, you know, as you would in new sectors, difficulties around regulation and standards and stuff, just, you know, essentially not being fit for purpose because no one's done it before. And that's really, as a research organization, a nice position for us to be in, to be the front ones that are kind of tackling that challenge. Okay, so then just to look at a few of the projects then that we have for rolling out of this strategy. The first one is, and it's kind of two projects really. It's the High Flyer project, where we're working with an American company called ZeroAvia, who are developing a fuel cell electric drivetrain for aviation. So the first project is £5.3 million pound project funded by Innovate UK to demonstrate this 250 kilowatt Piper M-class 6-seater plane that you'll see in the top right-hand corner here. And that had it was the first commercial style aviation flight, which was entirely fueled by hydrogen, which we produced using a small-scale electrolyzer down in Cranfield Airfield. The electrolyzer comes from a German company called Enapter, and that can produce a few kilos of hydrogen per day, which we're then compressing and storing in this refueling truck, which you'll see in the back of the picture here. So then we're kind of scaling that up then in High Flyer 2, which is really to go to the next stage of scaling up this solution and getting it ready for certification so it could be rolled out as a commercial endeavor. And really, I guess our role in that project is both providing the green hydrogen, but also making sure that we can dispense it at a rate that's comparable to what standard aviation practices are. So trying to dispense, you know, what we need to get to is about 100 kilograms of hydrogen in about 15 minutes, which is really far beyond where the state of the art is today. Okay, so then we have a couple of projects on the maritime side. Just to mention this one, I actually don't know the name of the project's called HyDime. It's down in the bottom right-hand corner. And really what we're looking at in this one is displacing about 50% of the diesel requirements in a combustion engine by injecting hydrogen into the fuel mix. So that's been a project that's been ongoing for a while now. We're also have another maritime project, which is called HySeas 3, which is looking at a fully hydrogen electric drivetrain for a ferry as well in Orkney. And then moving on the using hydrogen for combined heat and power as well. This is a project that was announced recently, funded by the Scottish Government, where we're acquiring a combined heat and power system from 2G, a Doosan Babcock company, and installing that in Kirkwall Airport in Orkney. And this will be providing, you know, power and heat into Kirkwall Airport, and we'll be providing hydrogen to that project as well. So EMEX taking a leading role, kind of somewhat of an EPC role, I suppose, in managing the design and integration of that system, but then also operating it and providing the hydrogen into it in the longer term. One other project then as well that we're working on is the High Spirits 2 project. So we recently awarded some funding from BASE as part of their green distillery competition to look at how you would decarbonize the distilling process for making whiskey and gin. So phase 1 is a feasibility study. There's us and maybe 10 other companies that have been awarded that phase 1 awards, and then 2 or 3 of these will be selected to go forward for demonstration projects this summer. And our partners in that are Edinburgh Napier University, Orkney Distilling and Highland Park. Okay, so that's some of the hydrogen projects that we have ongoing at the moment in Orkney. There's a few other bits that I haven't gone into. And really then we've had the opportunity to work with other partners in Europe via a few other projects called Green Highlands, Islander, and the Heaven project in the Netherlands. And really these are looking at replicating some of the successes that we've had in Orkney in developing a hydrogen economy and taking that forward. Right. And then just lastly to mention, we're also involved in a couple of projects providing techno-economic support around generating hydrogen offshore. We're seeing a lot of interest in this. Our core client base really is power generating technologies. And we've been working with a couple of technology developers to look at this, both from a techno-economic standpoint, but also from the regulatory standpoint and what issues people are likely to encounter. We've also recently been awarded a contract with the Scottish Government to look at offshore winds to hydrogen and the supply chains for that that are existing in Scotland and in France. So that project's ongoing at the moment. And right, this is kind of just an overview, I suppose, of where we've gotten to. We started this journey in about 2014, and in 2016 we had our electrolyzer in place. Today we have, I think that should be 10 projects ongoing at the moment. So there should be hopefully 2 electrolyzers on site in Orkney, 3 electrolyzers on site in Orkney by the end of this year. And quite a large research program, which is really targeted at driving that net zero agenda. And where we want to get to then in 2024 is, really zeroing in on the maritime decarbonisation aspect. There's also a larger piece ongoing here around the ScotWind leasing rounds and potentially a huge amount of offshore wind that's to be built out around the Orkney Islands in the coming period, which is really alluding back to some of the really great messaging coming from Caspar and the Catapult earlier. And that's the end of my presentation. I was worried I had one more slide because I know we're coming up against the time, but that's back over to you, Simon.
Thanks very much, Rob. That's brilliant. I mean, so much going on the island. Do you think there's going to be a name change coming up then? So maybe European Hydrogen Energy Centre?
Oh, I was thinking the same thing when the Catapult was talking about the Hydrogen Institute earlier. Yeah, I mean, it is something that we've discussed. I guess, EMEC's a small organization in a kind of a small space, which is marine energy. So it's quite a strong brand there. We did wonder what the hydrogen sector thinks about that name, but I think the conclusion we came to is that it probably largely doesn't matter in the longer term. So.
Yeah. It's a sort of serious question for me. Just looking at Michelle's presentation about Energy Kingdom and what you're doing from an island community perspective and a great business model that you're starting to replicate elsewhere. Is there a conversation going on between ourselves around Energy Kingdom and what you're doing? Are we starting to compare notes? If we're not, should we?
I'm not sure we are, and we absolutely should be. I mean, what we're trying to do in the island context is very different to what would happen in the very large scale context that you would be talking about in the port of Milford Haven with the large gas production or gas facilities that are there. Yeah. But there's definitely a similar piece that could emerge in Orkney in the future, particularly with the build out of very large offshore wind projects. So I think there's a lot that we can learn from in Orkney from the Heaven project, or the project in the port of Milford Haven as well.
Okay, great. A couple of questions in the chat. One was about the population of Orkney and that hydrogen sort of service, and whether there's any sort of scale up plans for the future.
Yeah, sure. So I get the Orkney is about 25,000 people. I'm going out on a bit of a limb here, but I think that's about right. So I'm not actually based there. I'm in Cambridge. But yeah, so it's about 25,000 people. I think the way we look at it is that there are certain activities that we can look at our scale of decarbonising locally on the islands. And using that as an opportunity to drive the net zero agenda. There's a larger piece around scale then, which is really where the cost reductions will come. And that's really to be driven, I suppose, from our point of view by the rollout of offshore wind. And I guess that would inevitably lead to a more similar approach to what would happen in Milford Haven, where you're piping large quantities of gas down south from Orkney.
Yeah, good. And then one from Showen Lee asking you what type of water electrolyzers that you're using in the project.
Sure, yeah. So they're PEM electrolyzers, both of all of the electrolyzers that we talked about today. ITM Power provided our original one. It's a 670 kilowatt PEM electrolyzer, and that's with them in Sheffield at the moment for some planned maintenance, and then coming back up, I think around May or so. But yeah, I think at the time it was the largest electrolyzer that ITM had built, and someone mentioned that earlier as well. I think just the scale up of electrolyzers for electrolysis purposes it's quite a significant challenge and something that is happening very quickly now already.
And then one from me, and probably it was one of your final comments about a future project looking at offshore wind and the production of hydrogen. So the catapult's very much focused on offshore wind, floating offshore wind rather, deployment in the Celtic Sea, and the recognition there that there's so much potential wind energy there that it would be far in excess of what we need. However, we probably build out more to cater for redundancy, and also probably look at hydrogen production there. So again, I think there's another conversation that we need to have about aligning our sort of project aspirations.
Yeah, absolutely. The more we can get linked up, and I think the link up at research level is always, that's where it needs to start, and that's where we can start laying the basis for these kind of collaborations. And it's really about driving learning, I suppose, and making sure that we're all talking to each other and learning from what each of us are doing. So yeah, absolutely, Simon.
Yeah, and I think just a message out to the delegates that are listening in. This is I won't call it a call to arms, but certainly an opportunity. If you're hearing things that you're interested in, you want to get involved, then do please get in touch. This is part of the reason that we have these discovery rooms, is to sort of, one is to broadcast what we're doing, and two is to try and look for potential sort of future project partners, and also areas of best practice and learning. So as I say, if you're hearing anything that sort of you think, oh, that sounds quite interesting, like to know a bit more, then please do get in touch, either with myself or and I can put you in touch with the speakers here. So it's about sort of working together to get these things right. Okay, Rob, thank you very much indeed. I noticed all your pictures were of blue skies, and
the weather's always great in Orkney, Simon.
It is. I know that. I've been lucky every time I've been there. It's always been nice, actually. So thank you very much indeed, Rob. That was a fantastic presentation. I now invite our next speaker, Bevan Ray from Inyanga Marine Projects. Bevan's going to talk to us about their project, the Tidal Hydrogen Production, Storage and Offtake. I call it a facility or platform rather. So far in this workshop, we started in Cornwall, which is where I am. We've been up to Glasgow, which is where Casper's based. Michelle's in Wales. Obviously, Rob is talking about projects in the Orkneys. Now we're coming back down to Cornwall and to Bevan. So Bevan, thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Brilliant. Thank you, Simon. Are my slides up on the screen there?
I can see your slides perfectly. Your audio is a bit muted though.
I was in park position. There we go. Ready to go.
That's better. Great. Thanks very much, Bevan. Cheers.
All right, thank you. Yeah, as Simon said, talking about FIPSO today, which is Tidal Hydrogen Production, Storage and Offtake. It's a concept which we came up with about 1.5 years ago now, really looking to tackle some of the challenges in the tidal sector by combining the technology with hydrogen, and plays on a similar concept to that of FPSOs in the oil and gas industry. And we think combining these two technologies together really offers an opportunity to overcome some of the challenges in the sector. So just a bit of background on who we are. We're two companies really. HydroWing is an R&D company where we're developing our own in-house tidal technologies. And then we have Inyanga Marine Projects, which is where we provide services, mainly offshore installation and contracting to the marine sector, mainly tidal developers. We're founded by Richard Parkinson, who's got over 30 years in the offshore management sector, starting in oil and gas, and then he's moved into marine and really specialized in tidal energy. He's been responsible for over 40% of the installed capacity for tidal turbines in Europe as of today, and he's actually up deploying a turbine just north of Scotland at the moment, which is why he can't be here today, unfortunately. So just a bit of background on the tidal energy market. I'll try and keep it short to focus on the hydrogen aspects, but tidal energy is a global resource. As you can see in the image here, it's not as vast as wind energy, but it's still global, and there's still lots of opportunities to harvest this predictable energy resource up to 5% of global electricity demand can be met. And Europe is really a hot spot, as Rob has touched on in his presentation for tidal energy. We've got opportunity to generate up to 10% of Europe's electricity demand using this tidal energy resource. One of the major advantages with tidal energy as well is that it's 100% predictable. So we can say in minutes or years or decades time that at 5 p.m. we'll generate this much energy from our tidal turbines, which really offers advantages in terms of management and forward planning for electricity and hydrogen markets. And just on top of that, Europe as a whole is a global leader, so there's lots of opportunities for us to develop this sector and have exportable content, which we're already seeing in the last year or so. Hydrogen market, I mean, a lot of this has been covered, but just to reiterate, we're facing a massive need to decarbonize the hydrogen sector. 95, close to 100% of hydrogen produced today is from fossil fuels. 830 million tons of carbon dioxide a year, which is greater than any EU member states' carbon emissions alone. So it's a really big sector which needs to be decarbonized if we're to meet this 2050 target of net zero. And we're now, I mean, as today is all about, we're now starting to see a exponential increase in alternative uses for this hydrogen, which is only going to push that demand higher and higher in the coming years. So it really wraps up into a ball why we've targeted the hydrogen market with FIPSO. Just to cover a few of the goals. So FIPSO allows us to tackle some of the conventional challenges with tidal energy, which at the moment are high capex and high implementation costs, especially as we're at a smaller scale than wind, and we're at a point where we're doing small arrays or demonstrator projects. It also offers an opportunity to tackle cross-sector synergistic challenges, helping the uptake of hydrogen, especially in the marine or nearshore sectors. And we believe it offers a lower cost, lower risk, potentially faster route to market for some tidal energy projects, which I'll cover in more detail in a few slides. I'll just let this play, give a background on what the actual technology is. Hopefully you can see that moving. Essentially what we've got is a vessel which has been optimized for stability and wave penetration. On this vessel we'll then have multiple tidal turbines under slung, and then inside the vessel is hydrogen equipment, your desalination plants and your electrolyzers and storage units. The whole concept is that we're creating a platform which is easy to install using low cost equipment in harbors, but also low cost vessels for installation and O&M as well, which are readily available, really trying to drive down that cost of tidal and ultimately hydrogen. The device will be moored on site with just a simple 4-point mooring, and then your turbines just generate electricity as you would in a normal tidal energy project. But then rather than the electricity being exported through a subsea cable, it's directed into an electrolyzer on board, produces hydrogen, which is compressed and then stored. I'll just let this carry on running. And then what storage builds up, we look to have a offtake vessel come in, and the hydrogen from the production plant will be discharged over onto the offtake vessel. This offtake vessel can then service a number of FIPSO devices, and then the hydrogen can be distributed to wherever it's needed on shore. And the beauty of this is that we're disconnected from a single point of delivery. So in theory, these small islands like the Orkney Islands, where there's a number of end users, we can provide hydrogen to all of these smaller end users. And obviously, key aspect of this is scaling up. So this just showing how we envision that could be possible. Larger units and the potential to hook in subsea tidal energy devices as well. Okay, just to cover a few of the advantages of FIPSO, I won't run over all of these, but the major one we see is that we're eliminating subsea infrastructure. So all of your tidal energy projects to date require a subsea cable. By having the hydrogen offshore, hydrogen production offshore, we're able to eliminate that. And these cables and the implementation of them counts to around 40 to 60% of implementation costs for tidal energy projects where we are at the moment in terms of scale. It also is a massive point of risk in tidal energy projects and offshore wind. It's a well-known failure risk. So by eliminating all of that structure, we've essentially got a dumb floating vessel, and the risk of failure is massively reduced, which provides certainty as we look to go to raise investment or finance for implementing these projects. Another important point, as I've touched on, is that we're autonomous from a grid. So we don't have that cable which is connecting us to a single point of delivery. We can produce hydrogen and distribute it to many end users, which is really quite an important fact, I think, at this point, especially in the hydrogen sector where it stands at the moment, where we don't have these big centralized end users. There's lots of little developing projects which are looking to utilize hydrogen, and FIPSO and a maritime distribution offers potential to service and to allow these small projects to spring up and develop. Just the last one I'll touch on is it's a single self-contained asset. So everything is housed in one unit. From a financing point of view for tidal energy projects, that's a really good advantage. It offers a low risk. If a project does go wrong, which has been seen in the past, unfortunately, it means that all the assets can be recovered and that value is retained for the financer without having to undertake expensive and laborious recovery of subsea assets and subsea cables. In addition to that, it also means that if hydrogen price in another area is higher, there is in theory potential to relocate the device nice and easily just by moving it as you would sail a ship between ports, for example. So just to run over what we've got in the actual FIPSO, just to make it a bit clearer. So we've got our tidal turbines, as I said. We then look to have the electrolyzer, and a key point of development here is that it would have to be marinized, which is something which we're looking to develop alongside a number of electrolyzer developers at the moment. We then have seawater, which would be our feedstock, desalination plant on board, which would provide a freshwater feedstock to the electrolyzer. Obviously, we would produce hydrogen as the tides go back and forth, and then this would be compressed to 350 or 700 bar, or even potential to liquidize the hydrogen as we look to much larger scales in the future. And then, yes, a separate vessel which would offtake this and provide it to our end user markets, which I think aligns quite nicely, which is what's been covered in the previous presentations. We would be looking to target the marine and nearshore sectors. So just four of them, the main sectors: offshore applications. So in theory, there is potential, as we're seeing the marine sector starting to look to hydrogen as a potential fuel to have vessels which could directly refuel offshore from these FIPSO-style devices or bunkered hydrogen storage. There's also a lot of opportunities, and we're pursuing several projects at the moment for dockside applications. So CO2 emissions in ports and marinas is quite a big area or focus area for reduction at the moment, and providing cold ironing as they're doing in Orkney, as Rob said, providing electricity to run the auxiliary systems, for these vessels in port, and hydrogen can really provide an alternative for that. There's also opportunity for ports or nearshore activities, your cranes, your vans and forklifts, all the equipment that's required for those to keep these ports and marinas running. Another major and one of the biggest sort of target areas for us at the moment is these small island communities, where they have a tidal resource, and they've obviously they're more of an isolated grid, so they're looking for a overarching system for decarbonisation to displace diesel generation, but also displace fuels which are used in other aspects which they're reliant on and is more costly for these island communities. And hydrogen provides a potentially a vector which can decarbonise all of those areas. So just to cover a few of the challenges which we see from the tidal energy perspective, and I guess, and some of which have been touched on from the hydrogen aspect as well. Tidal energy is an emerging sector, so we're not at the scale of wind or solar. So there's obviously some cost reduction aspects which need to be achieved there, which will ultimately, as we come to the greater scales of production, we should be, I see no reason why we wouldn't be able to compete with the likes of offshore wind, producing at scales which will really help bring or contribute to that lower cost of hydrogen and the ultimate uptake of it in the future. From a hydrogen production side of things, as was touched on in the first presentation, the cost of electrolyzers at the moment is quite high. There's lots of projects going on to bring that down. A major point is, as of yet, the hydrogen production hasn't been proven offshore. There's lots of projects in the offshore wind sector which are looking to do that in the coming years. We see that FIPSO can utilize a lot of the learning from that and integrate that as we look to grow. Another major aspect is the end user markets. So there's a lot of interest in generating hydrogen at the moment, as we see, but it's really bolstering the end user markets as well, and the uptake to allow these projects to go ahead with an overall system thinking, providing both the generation of hydrogen and also that end user cost-effective uptake as well. So just to finish on, I've just got a little case study here of where FIPSO, or we see FIPSO has real advantages, and this is in the Channel region, the English Channel region. So this region has quite a lot of, well, a substantial tidal energy resource, one of the best in the world really, up and above of 4 gigawatts. We've got a number of tidal energy sites dotted around this, which you can see in the red circles here. And throughout this region, we've also got a number of major ports, which are obviously our end users or areas for end users. So FIPSO, having FIPSO projects deployed at each of these red circles, we're able to create a hydrogen capacity market whereby one or several of these tidal sites can service a number of these ports by distributing hydrogen in a maritime network. Through the access to all of these ports. And I think a major advantage for an area like the Channel is that it has struggled to implement large-scale offshore wind projects like that, which are seen on the east coast of the UK, whereas tidal is found in regions which are highly dynamic and generally avoided by marine traffic, and they have a much more higher public acceptance than these large offshore wind farms. So it offers an opportunity, more of a niche opportunity to implement and harness these renewable resources and provide hydrogen, distributed hydrogen to these areas. And that's all for me. Thank you, everyone. And I'll hand back over to you, Simon.
Great, thanks very much, Bevan. Really good stuff there. I think from my point of view, from an engineering perspective, when you look at sort of FIPSO, you think, yeah, actually, you know, it looks like it can do that. It's a sort of straightforward, simple design, and you think, yeah, that's actually quite a good idea. And I suppose that issue around tidal predictability is a really, you know, important one. We know exactly when the tides are going to flow, you know, down to the nearest sort of minute almost in most sites. But from a sort of hydrogen production perspective, then, you know, putting sort of that cyclic energy into an electrolyzer, how does that work? Do you have to sort of you know, manage that energy and perhaps create some energy storage first so the electrolyzer works efficiently?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's all an optimization technique, really. You've got obviously the more capacity of electrolyzer you got, the price generally, well, tends to go up. So if you can optimize that with storage and you can create a nice flat base load of energy, then you can bring down the cost of that electrolyzer whilst making it more efficient and producing hydrogen at a more constant rate. To really drive down the costs there. And it really, tidal integrates nicely with energy storage to create that nice flat baseload power almost. Okay,
there was a question from Rob Flynn actually in the chat, and he wanted to know what the sort of pumping rate was from FIPSO into the bunker vessel. And obviously it depends on size and things like that, but just, you know, roughly what's that sort of time?
Yeah, so I can't give you a value for this precise flow rate, but obviously with tides we've got a cyclical nature, so we'd be looking to offload in that slack period where you can get sort of 2 to 3 hours maximum, really. Whether that's achieved over a single slack period or it's done over multiple is something which we're still looking into, really. And again, it comes around to that optimization of what pressure can you store at, and some of the more sort of technical, there's a lot of heat dissipation and so on that you have to consider, which we haven't quite got into the engineering of yet. But speaking with hydrogen electrolyzer and storage developers, it's certainly feasible. Yeah, okay, I'll let you take that one offline with Rob. Yeah. And thanks very much indeed for your presentation. That's really interesting. What I'd like to do now is move on to our final 2 presentations, which are back to back, and they're from Professor Xiaowan Li and Mi Tan, a lecturer, both based at the University of Exeter. And as I say, they're going to do their presentations back to back, which would then take us up to sort of the last chance for sort of formal questions and answers across the whole range of what we've talked about today. So in the first instance, Professor Xiaowan Li, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Simon, for the introduction. Good morning, everyone. My name is Xiaowan Li. I'm Professor of Energy Storage, working in Renewable Energy Department in University of Exeter. Very pleased to be here to communicate with you. Today, in my topic, I'm presenting you water, AEM water electrolyzers for green hydrogen production. Yeah, to provide you a background information, let's begin with the global hydrogen consumption over the last 4 decades. Bevan already briefly touched this. Here, I just want to give you a little bit more detail. This figure shows the hydrogen consumption. This data from International Energy Agency. As we can see, it's a hydrogen in million tons here. And in each year, you can see there are 2 bars. And the bar to the left represents the hydrogen consumption for pure form application. For example, for ammonia production, which they use for fertilizer production, as shown in the yellow bar. And the red bar is for petroleum refinery application. The bar to the right is represent hydrogen application without purification, for example, for methanol production and for metal refinery application. We can see here the hydrogen consumption has increased fourfold from 28 million tons in 1975 to 115 million tons in 2018, in which we can see 70 million tons for hydrogen application in pure form, while 45 million tons for application without purification. We can see the increase is really remarkable, and the trend will continue. In financial aspect, hydrogen market is huge. It's valued at $115 billion in 2017. Yeah, so here just give you a general idea about the hydrogen consumption and demand. It's really high. Nowadays, as showing in Kaspar's presentation, people talk about hydrogen in different colors. And here, I just show you the pie chart. You can see, basically, we labeled hydrogen with 3 colors. Black or gray hydrogen refer to hydrogen production from fossil fuel. As shown in this pie chart, you can see 96% of hydrogen currently come from fossil fuel. Only 4% from electrolysis. The blue hydrogen is referred to hydrogen from fossil fuel in combination with CCUS, so which means emitted CO2 can be captured, utilized, and stored. So this is decarbonized route to achieve net zero. Green hydrogen refer to production of hydrogen from renewable electricity. So this is my topic today. This slide here, I just give you very brief information about hydrogen from fossil fuel. It's black hydrogen, as we mentioned. The process involves gas phase reaction. Typically is the steam methane reforming, as shown in the equation here. It's high temperature, around 700 up to 1000 degrees. This plant, this is very matured technology. However, as showing this BP's data, fossil fuel reserve to production ratio, we all know fossil fuel one day will, cannot be sustainable. We cannot rely on fossil fuel. Secondly, it's called pollution. So we must take action to move towards blue hydrogen or green hydrogen. For green hydrogen, as shown in this diagram, we can use excess electricity from renewables for water electrolyzer and to produce hydrogen. The produced hydrogen can be used for ammonia production and for petroleum refinery. Through this route, all of the product will be green, because no consumption of fossil fuel, no emission of CO2, and also from water electrolyzer technology, the produced hydrogen purity is very high. And also the byproduct oxygen is also valuable. So this route, is truly green technology. For water electrolyzer, it's not a new technology. There are many now 3 types. Low temperature. Here I focus on low temperature water electrolyzer. First type is a traditional water electrolyzer plant for bulk hydrogen production. As shown in picture here, the cell efficiency typically is 60%. The operation current density around 250 milliamp per square centimeter, and the system require large quantity of liquid KOH as electrolyte. The challenge for this technology is efficiency. You can see it's not high, and the operating current is low. In order to overcome this challenge, scientists developed the PAM water electrolyzer. PAM is a zero gap configuration as shown here. In the middle is a protein exchange membrane, not just a separator. And this design enable 2 electrode contact with membrane tightly and to reduce the system ohmic drop. And also the PAM enable feeding in pure water, so it's less corrosive. However, at the interface between the electrode and the membrane, it's a very acidic environment, which means only precious metal, for example, platinum, palladium, or iridium, are stable in such corrosive environment. So the system requires precious metal as a catalyst, as shown here. The good news for PAM electrolyzer is efficiency is very high, can go up to 90%, and the system can be operated at very high current density. For example, at 1 amp, the cell voltage is reasonable low, and the system can also affordable for current high to 2 amp per square centimeter. As shown in Rob's presentation, ITM Power in Sheffield is the world leading industry in hydrogen production based on PAM water electrolyzer. This slide just to show you some typical project currently conducted by ITM Power. Okay, now let's talk about AEM water electrolyzer, which is a 3rd type and is also my research group's focus. AEM is the anion exchange membrane, so which means the membrane will allow hydroxide ion to transport between the 2 electrodes. As we can see, the overall reaction still water splitting. However, here you can see at cathode is different compared to PAM, is different. Water feeding in cathode side and produce evolve hydrogen and then hydroxide ion. With this anion exchange membrane, will allow hydroxide ion to transport through the membrane towards anode and where oxygen evolved. The advantage for this system, firstly, is a zero gap configuration. So the overall system IR drop is can be reduced significantly. And the system can be operated at high current. Currently, we can achieve 1 amp and 2 amp per square centimeter. Another advantage is cheaper because this is alkaline. We operate in dilute KOH electrolyte solution, it's less corrosive, and alkaline system enable us to use a cheaper metal, for example, nickel, iron-based material as catalyst. So the overall cost can be reduced with AEM water electrolyzer. This slide gives you idea about research currently carried out in my group. This picture is AEM lab cell in Penryn campus. This is a 10 square centimeter by 10 square centimeter electrode area. And we use all of this technique, equipment, facility to carry out the research. And this Dr. Adeline Loy, she is leading the hydrogen production project in the group. Okay, here just give you summary comparison between PEM and AM. As mentioned, PEM operated in acidic environment, require catalyst precious metal, for example, platinum, iridium oxide. Membrane typically is Nathan membrane, which is protein exchange membrane. For ITM power, they have their own membrane. System efficiency pretty high. It's commercially available. Now the research focus in PEM is to reduce the precious metal loading to develop cheaper membrane because it is reported for PEM fuel cell, 50% of the stock cost come from precious metal. For the PEM water electrolyzer and fuel cell, they share similar structure of MEA, membrane electrode assembly, in the heart of the stack. So for PEM electrolyzer, more is highly likely most cost come from precious metal. So that is the research focus. For AEM here, the system operated in alkaline environment, which enable us to use cheaper metal. For example, we use the nickel-based binary or ternary oxide or hydroxide as catalyst for oxygen evolution, and the nickel metal alloy as a catalyst for hydrogen evolution. Currently, the technology in its earliest stage development. In the lab, we can achieve efficiency around 65%. Now research focus to develop catalyst, to develop new membrane. Okay, currently in my group, we are working with partners working on a Power to X project. The project sponsored by ERDF in the program of Interreg E2C program. It's covering 4 countries, UK, France, Netherlands, and Belgium. In this project, the project title is E2C, Electron to High Value Chemical Product. Involve 8 partners across these 4 countries. The project led by TNO in Netherlands. The overall objective for this project, the idea is we use electricity from renewables for firstly for hydrogen production, that is indirect route. And then the hydrogen combined with CO2, we produce fuel such as DME or methanol. We also have direct route, which directly converts CO2 into valuable chemicals such as formic acid or formate. So if you are interested in this project, please feel free to contact me. We can discuss more. Okay, I just quickly show the research focus now in water electrolyzer area. For both PEM and AEM, because they all share the zero gap configuration. The cell voltage determined by this equation, and the efficiency you can see determined by E cell, equilibrium cell voltage and operational cell voltage. In order to achieve high efficiency, as we can see from this equation, we can't do nothing. We can do nothing towards equilibrium E cell, because that is 1.23 volt at room temperature and 1 atmosphere pressure. So what we can do, we can reduce operational cell voltage. So we reduce overpotential at 2 electrodes and reduce the system ohmic drop. According to our research and literature, the overpotential at anode always significantly larger than overpotential at cathode. It's around 400 millivolts. So if we do nothing, we could lose 20% efficiency. So you can see it's very important to develop new catalyst material to reduce the overpotential and then to increase the system efficiency. So this is a result. I just quickly show you the catalyst development in our group. We use all of the essential technique to characterize our samples. Okay, so if you are interested, you can find more detail from the published paper here. I'll just give you some example. And we select efficient catalyst and then optimize the composition. For example, here you see with this composition, we can achieve the overpotential reduced to 265%, which is about 15% efficiency increase. Okay, we also carry out research to develop catalyst for cathode for hydrogen evolution. And we test the samples stability, and we also have equipment and facility to make MEA, membrane electrode assembly, which is hard in the cell, to test the material stability and durability, etc. Okay, finally, I give you this slide and introduce our group department, renewable energy department. In 2003, University of Exeter created a new undergraduate degree program, renewable energy. It is the first of its kind in the UK and Europe to offer renewable energy degree. Now we have achieved more than 400 graduates. In the group, we are conducting research covering the area offshore renewable energy, solar energy, energy storage, policy regulation, smart grid and power electronics, as well as life cycle analysis. Currently, we have 18 academic staff, 33 research staff, and 55 PhD and MD students, very dynamic, vibrant research group. We are based in Penryn campus. You know, for University of Exeter, we have 4 campuses, 2 based in Exeter city, another 2 in Cornwall. We are in Penryn campus, a very beautiful campus, and we have abundance resources, renewable resources around the Cornwall region. So you are very welcome to visit us. Thank you. Now I over to Simon. Thank you for listening.
Yep, thanks very much, Siobhan. Martine, have you got a presentation you can share? Thanks very much.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Mi Tian, a lecturer in low carbon engineering from the University of Exeter. I'm glad that today I have an opportunity to share with you about a couple of my projects around engineering porous materials for hydrogen storage. Sorry. It's stuck here. Okay, so my research interests and expertise focus on hydrogen energy, particularly hydrogen storage, with three focuses: engineering materials to solve the problem of hydrogen storage. I have also intensive experience in using neutron techniques for some fundamental studies. So in today's short presentation, I'm hoping to cover these 3 points and would like to discuss more in details afterwards. So the hydrogen has a great potential to be able to store those intermittent and renewable energy resources. So the idea is you take your water and you can split water apart into hydrogen and oxygen, and then you can use hydrogen to power your house, your car, whatever need energy to drive. And then hydrogen will be converted into water again. So you can see this is almost a green cycle. Water comes in and out. And we talk about, the previous speakers talk about the challenges in the production. And one of the main technical barriers is hydrogen storage and transportation. So because hydrogen is lightweighted and invisible and flammable gas, so it has a very low volumetric energy density. So if you look at this energy density table, volumetric density against the gravimetric density, and we can see hydrogen is located in the bottom right. So if you look at the gravimetric density, energy per weight, and we can see hydrogen is 3 times higher than diesel or petrol, which is fantastic. However, if you look at volumetric density, energy per volume, we can see hydrogen is nearly zero, which means a huge volume of hydrogen gas needs to be used to generate same amount of energy as diesel or petrol. So conventionally, hydrogen, we compress hydrogen in a high pressure gas tank at 700 times atmospheric pressure. And you can see the photo on the left. That is hydrogen bus running in London. And we can see there are 4 huge hydrogen tanks sitting on top of the bus. Comparing with the size of the private car, you can see directly where the problem is. And another method, classical method for hydrogen storage is liquefy hydrogen at cryogenic temperature, -253. And for example, for the spaceship, we can see this green hydrogen tank that is a liquid hydrogen tank. And again, it also occupies a big space. And both techniques are energy intensive and also pose serious risk issues. So what we want to do is to store hydrogen in porous materials in solid states, which is also called molecular sponge. Now, as a sponge absorbs water, the molecular sponge can absorb hydrogen. So a very special feature of this porous materials is a large surface area and tiny small pores. So as soon as we expose the clean porous surface to gas, it will absorb, compress, and store hydrogen molecules in its tiny spaces to reach an extremely high density, without which we wouldn't achieve otherwise. And so my job is to gain better understanding on how gas molecules interact with the surface, therefore lead to a better design for porous materials. One of the challenges here is to how to characterize hydrogen and the porous materials. As I just said, hydrogen is lightweighted and it's insensitive to the most lab-based techniques, for example, X-ray diffraction. And so it's difficult to see through what's going on inside of the pores. And the neutron is the best candidate for this job. A neutron is highly sensitive to hydrogen, and the neutron beam can deeply penetrate everything. That's why it's quite dangerous. So it can penetrate the cryostat and the sample itself, sample container, sample itself, and directly probe hydrogen molecules inside of the pores. And you can see this figure is a typical inelastic neutron scattering figure collected on hydrogen stored in the porous materials at 77 Kelvin. And we can see a pronounced peak here. That is a characteristic peak for solid hydrogen and not present for either liquid or gaseous hydrogen. And so just to remind you, to get solid bulk hydrogen, and we need to cool down the system below its critical temperature, that is 17 Kelvin minus 280 or 90 degrees Celsius. But by applying my material, and we can achieve this solid-like hydrogen at 77 Kelvin liquid nitrogen temperature, and that is much practical and affordable. So to identify the best porous structure to achieve the hydrogen extremely high hydrogen density, and a different material has been measured via neutron scattering. And we can see, for example, this one. This is an onion-like carbon with a much larger pore size, larger than 1 nanometer, and we can see it doesn't have has the ability to densify hydrogen because the space is too large for this purpose. And however, for other porous materials with a smaller pore size, less than 1 nanometer, ideally 0.7 nanometer, and it all shows this solid-like hydrogen peak here. And so now we know the pore size playing a key role in this hydrogen densification process. And how about pore shapes? To answer this question, we selected a different 3 types of pore shapes. They are slit pore shapes using this graphitic layers we can see from the microscope, and single wall carbon nanotubes representing cylindrical pore shapes, and activated carbon that has completely disordered structure. And then we identify the optimal pore shape is the slit pore shape with a pore size at 0.7 nanometer. We visualize, we employed the molecular simulation to visualize what really happened inside the pores. And so we can see the golden sphericals are hydrogen atoms, and the gray stick are carbon. So we can see in the slit pore shapes, hydrogen molecules form a highly ordered 2-layer structure. And the space is just too small and perfectly suit hydrogen to fit in and fix hydrogen, solidify hydrogen inside its space, so hydrogen molecules cannot move around. On the other hand, if you look at this cylindrical pores, hydrogen's structures are quite different inside. It's just a 1-layer structure. It got a spherical shape, and it's has a certain amount of mobility, which makes its density less denser. And based on, so we identified optimal pore size and the pore shape for hydrogen densification, for hydrogen storage. And based on this theoretical study, we developed a top 4 composite membrane. So we incorporate those high enhanced hydrogen storage activity porous powders inside the porous polymer matrix to make a membrane, make it easy to operate. And those are top 4 membranes. So the highest hydrogen capacity is around 9 weight% at 120 bar. And we also care about measured the mechanical property for its application. We can see its mechanical property can satisfy the multi-purpose application, but with the concentration of porous fillers in the matrix, and the mechanical property dropped significantly. And the composite membrane also show a highly thermal stability, and we can see it can stay at around 20 degrees Celsius temperature in air. And then we applied this composite membrane inside the high pressure hydrogen storage tank as a liner to line up this hydrogen tank in order to increase its hydrogen capacity and reduce its pressure. Therefore, we can use more standard material, standard regulator, make it lighter and cheaper. So that's the quick overview of my project. I hope we are working towards applying our material for energy storage at a national grid level, and so offer the green future for our next generation, and hopefully will also improve the energy security. And finally, I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge all my collaborators and the founders, and also thank you, Simon and your team, to organize this fantastic event. I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much all for your attention. I hand over back to Simon.
Thank you very much, Mitan, and perfect timing. We've slightly overrun. We've had a couple of questions in the chat, which I think Xiaowen Li has answered. Congratulations came in from John Cherry on the presentation. I hope that those people who are left listening, you found this of interest. I certainly learned a lot actually from this, which was excellent. There's a lot going on in this field, as you'll appreciate. A lot of active projects, and we need to do more to share that. I think it's a shame we didn't have time for more questions on the last two presentations, because fascinating research that's going on there, and particularly the work looking at sort of energy storage and the porous materials, and then the engagement between sort of academia and industry. So with that, I'd like to draw this this particular discovery room to a close. I'd first of all like to thank the presenters for the hard work in sort of coming together and coordinating their presentations and giving up their time today. A special mention to Vicky Grigg in the background, who's been sort of controlling the IT and providing that safety net in case there are any bloopers with people's slides. So thank you very much for that, Vicky. And finally to you out there somewhere in the virtual world, who's been paying attention and asking us questions and looking at these slides. So thank you very much indeed for your time. And I hope we can interest you with some further Marine Iron Open Discovery Room events in the future. So everyone, thank you very much. Stay safe and enjoy the rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.